Aloha and welcome to Connection to the Cosmos with your host, me, Dr. Lisa Thompson, where I have out of this world conversations with extraordinary people. And today I'm really excited to have on Alan Steinfeld, and we're going to bring him on in just a moment. But first, a few announcements. If you haven't had the opportunity yet to grab my free 20-minute meditative journey to meet your galactic family and guides, make sure you do so on my website, mysticmanta.com or drlisajthompson.com. Also, I'm going to be leading my Galactic Ascension Channel Certification Program online February 22nd and 23rd of 2025. So check that out if you're already in the healing industry. I'm also leading my Galactic Retreat April 30th to May 4th here on the Big Island of Hawaii next year. So please, if you're interested in doing a deep dive journey, then come see me on that. All of that is on mysticmanta.com or drlisajthompson.com. And then if you're coming to Hawaii anytime throughout the year, specifically to the Big Island, then come see me on one of my Big Island UFO tours where you will see the night sky in a whole new way using my advanced Generation 3 military night vision goggles. So without further ado, I'm going to bring on Alan. Hello, Alan.
Hey, good to see you again, Lisa. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Let me read the short version of your bio. You have so much good stuff in here.
Well,
and I can't wait
we've been at it for a while, right? We've been doing this.
Yeah. So Alan Steinfeld is an author, filmmaker, lecturer, and interviewer. He stands as a distinguished voice in the field of metaphysics, scientific discoveries, creative inquiry, and the enigmatic domain of UFOs. The award-winning television series, New Realities, appeared on Manhattan Cable, which appeared in the mid-1990s, was his initial contribution to the emerging consciousness moment of the times. His most recent best-selling book is titled Making Contact, Preparing for the New Realities of Extraterrestrial Existence, and it won the Conscious Life Book Awards in 2023. So
Yeah.
I'm so excited to have you on here, Alan, because we met officially back in March at the Sedona. Actually, no, we met last November at Disclosure Fest.
Oh, right. Yes. Yeah. But did you introduce yourself there? Because I just remember you from the.
So Tracy Dolan is the one who introduced us.
Oh, how do you know Tracy? Tracy's a great person.
Because in her bio for Disclosure Fest, she had indicated that she was a former Rumpus school member.
Oh, right. So I remember that. Yes.
So I introduced myself to her saying, hey, I was at the school too. And then she's like, well, do you know Alan? You need to meet Alan too.
Right. I forgot to, because that's where a lot of us had, well, me personally started. Well, now I'm teaching remote viewing, like Tracy's really into remote viewing, and it all started with Ramtha sending and receiving. So you were part of that too. So you were at my very beginnings there. I mean, I don't know when you were born, but I started in 1981 with Ramtha.
Okay, well, and I was born in 1972, and I started 1986 with Ramtha. So 5 years later.
Because your mother got into Ramtha, right?
Correct, and my aunt was in it too.
Oh, what was your mother's name, if you don't mind sharing in front of your audience?
Sharon Rosenberger.
From New York?
Nope, from Oklahoma City.
Oklahoma Rosenberger.
And then she and Anita and Debbie, they co-owned Homestead Real Estate.
Debbie, the music person?
Nope, Debbie Draper.
Oh, Debbie Draper. I know that name.
Yeah, and Anita Marriott.
That's familiar.
Anyway.
I know. Just that's not interesting for your listeners, but it's interesting. But no, do your listeners or watchers know who Ramtha is or was, still is?
Some of them do. Some of them are new. So I would love for you to share what got you into going to the Ramtha school initially.
Right. I'm glad you asked that. It's one of my favorite stories. I mean, it's like history. But, I had a friend. Maybe you knew him. Do you know Bobby Faust? He was a dwarf. And he was no longer, I don't think, in the school when you were there. But he told me in 1980, actually, this amazing woman, she channels this 35,000 warrior from Atlantis. And she does this incredible things. And she says amazing. And I said, I was just coming out of college, and I think I said, this woman must be crazy. And then, and then I saw him again, and then someone left some tapes, actually, some early dialogue tapes in my apartment, and I thought, okay, I'll listen to it. And on the tape, this woman was asking about her skin. She had this really bad skin, I guess eczema or something. And Ramtha says to her, and she says that she's tried everything, nothing has helped. Ramtha says, have you tried loving it? And it's like, there was a moment where it's like she got it, and I got it. And I said, well, if this is about love, I'm going to check it out. And then there was another session with Ramtha coming to New York in October 1981. And it was did you know Thomas Sharkey? Did you know him?
Yeah.
He organized that. I think he was living in New York at the time. He later became Shirley MacLaine's personal assistant, who was at those earlier did you know Shirley when she was there?
I
No.
didn't know Shirley, but I did know Linda.
Oh, Linda, you're right. Did you know Selma?
We were in line together. We
Oh,
didn't.
right. Anyway, all right. But I went to the dialogue, and I thought, well, either this woman is crazy because she's channeling a 35,000-year-old warrior from Atlantis, or she's a great actress, or maybe, perhaps, I don't know, possibly, probably not. It's possible that she's channeling, because channeling early 80s, no
Yeah.
one, I mean, there was Jane Roberts and Seth, and that was fantastic, but there was a big lull in the channeling market for a long time, and now everybody's channeling. But and you're channeling, but
Channeled, which that was a whole process, but yeah.
right. But in the early 80s, nobody, I mean, no one even heard the name, the word channeling. It was not like a word. Now, like, people are saying like they're channeling this actress when they're acting or something like that. It's like in the culture, channeling, the word, not even about channels themselves. Although I'm hosting a conference in Sedona again about channeling. So anyway, so I went to the place at Central Park West and 73rd Street. Was a big kind of auditorium. There's probably 100 people there, and Ramtha was answering questions. I mean, first I saw Jay-Z up in the elevator. She was very shy. She was very shy and quiet, and just I didn't even know it was her because she just kind of stood in the corner. And of course, she changed over the years, but because she became a lot more outspoken. But there I was in the audience, and people asking questions about their cat and their partner, and then this, and he would go on and on, march around the stage, and then he calls on me and said, "Hey, what say you, beloved entity? How be you this day in your time?" And I said, "Me? Are you talking to me?" It's like this voice, it was very Shakespearean in the earlier days. He'd have to explain every word, how you say it in your time. Indeed, like it was very archaic English, because I felt like Rand had to define every term he used in our language. How be you this day in your time, because so it's like, and I said, "Me, you're talking to me." He goes, "Indeed, beloved master." And that was a great thing I loved about Ramtha. He called everyone masters,
Yeah.
because you are the master of your reality. So everything I learned from Ramtha, it has become the foundation of all the new realities, everything I write, because it really set the baseline. So anyway, I'm sitting there and you're talking to me, and then it goes, "Indeed, beloved master, you be a most contented entity." And then in that moment, there was like this shift in reality. It was like being on drugs, sort of, or something. Everything became sort of hazy and fluid, and like reality it didn't melt, but it just kind of became just this other higher plane. And me and Ramtha, or whatever Ramtha, kind of met or almost merged in the middle of that room energetically. We kind of came together, and in that moment, I knew I was greater than my body. I knew the God that lives as us. I knew that, and that was that was a big moment, a big turning point. It was a big awakening of everything that would be of interest to me, everything that was like, and I said, okay, that was an interesting experience. And I thought, well, if there's, I'm going to try like this mystical path or check it out. And if there's really nothing to it, I'm sure it's very, very shallow. I'm sure it's very, very sure there's like nothing there. It's like, oh, that was interesting. So, I started to read mystical books and autobiography of a yogi. And then I realized, wow, this is deep and wide. And, once you open that door and go through it, it kind of closes behind you. And there's no going back to the old way, the old energy field. And at that point in time, Rantha would also do what he called the Christ raising, where he'd go around to everyone. Do you remember that? That was probably, he only
Remind.
did that when the audience was small, and he'd go around and just kind of energetically infuse each chakra or seal, as he would call it, and kind of give you a kind of upgrade by going around to each person and doing that. So there was definitely a shift there, but because of that initial experience, I did, and I had earlier experiences of being out of my body and things like that, but I never really connected it to the spiritual development. And the foundation of Ramtha's teaching is that you are God, right? You know
Right.
that.
Yeah.
And so it's like that is a paradigm shift from worshiping God out there. And he would say, like, okay, where is this God? He would say, it's closer than your breath. It is you. Everything you create in your reality is because the God of your being has created that for you. So
Mm.
it's like, you take responsibility for your reality on whatever level it happens, because the God of your being, like, you call forth the God of your being. And people, those are terms that Ramtha kind of describe, the Lord God of your being, right? The
Right.
God is the spirit, the Lord is the soul, and the being is the total embodiment. And people don't realize, and this is another one of Ramtha's teaching that I kind of like to share, is that the difference between soul and spirit, and people don't even, they use it interchangeably. But according to the Ramtha teachings, which I still prescribe to, even though, I've read lots of other stuff, but I think there's a major good distinction between soul and spirit. Do you remember what that was? Do you remember what he says?
Not off the top of my head. No, but
Well,
please share me in the audience.
he says, Ramtha, in the early teachings, he said, in the beginning of creation, whatever you want to talk about, he used to do those creation stories, and the source, the isness, contemplated itself and
Right. Okay.
collapsed. Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. And then from that reflection, that was the God source, whatever you want to call it.
Mhm.
And then reflection became all the beings that we are basically now as God beings, as creators. But we'd have these adventures in creation, but the way to own the experience, remember owning the experience, was to register the experience as wisdom. So that's wisdom. It only becomes wisdom when the God and the soul collapse and you own it.
Yeah.
And so when you own the experience, this God needed a vehicle to house the wisdom of those experiences. The soul was created as the child of the God, as the Lord of the being, to house the experience. Some people call that the Akashic records now. You can call it whatever you want, but it's the soul, basically, the Lord of the being. The God is the spirit, the Lord is the soul, and the being. So from the Lord God of your being, you bring that into unification, but the soul is the thing that houses the wisdom of experience. And every moment, it's registering a feeling in the source. Every moment we are in existence, on whatever level, and many, the soul is registering the energy, the feeling nature, and that becomes the Akashic records in my understanding. So and it's happening on many levels and dimensions. And of course, like this, the whole story of that, and on each level of creation, the soul got denser, or the embodiments get denser and denser. And when it got to this plane of demonstration, the soul is split into this polarity: male, female, positive, negative, and that became the legendary soulmates, which I'm still looking for if you have any friends. But
Okay.
thanks to Ramp, I'm still looking for that. But so anyway, that's a little part of the Ramp, the teaching that actually made sense to me, because people often use soul and spirit interchangeably, and I like that distinction. I'm not saying that's true. I'm just saying that makes sense to me. Everyone has their own interpretation. So anyway, that's how I got started. A little sidetracking there, but yes,
No,
that's
I love that. And so you know, we learned this amazing body of
yes,
knowledge of
yes.
these, you know, tools and things to really upgrade our life. And so how did you then take that to transition to all the beautiful stuff you're doing?
Right. Well, since I'm sort of an obsessive type, Ramtha opened that door, and I wanted to find out everything I could about what does this mean to be the Lord God of your being, to be. And so I took probably hundreds of workshops. I took, everyone who came to New York. I took Reiki. I studied acupuncture. Soul readings, crystals, love crystals for a while. Everything that was kind of new age. You remember when the new age was like really the thing, and then in a few years it became really old. I think there was an article in the New York Times about Ramtha calling him. Do you remember that, the front page of the Times? I think it was in the mid '80s, and when he was on, actually, he was on Merv Griffin. Did you
I
see
remember
that?
that. Yes.
I saved that VHS tape and posted it on YouTube, so you could see Ramtha on Merv Griffin on YouTube. I mean, the one I posted was taken down but someone fortunately had made a copy of that and reposted it because it is classic. And you could see Merv actually being very, very nervous interviewing Ramtha. And then it's because this guy, what was his name, Lex, who was Merv Griffin's producer, had came to some of the dialogues, and I think he got in there because Shirley MacLaine was a big fan. Do you know the whole story about Shirley MacLaine, though, being Ramtha's brother in Onai? Do you know
I
that?
only a little bit of the story.
That was quite a drama. He acted out all these characters in one little scene where Shirley MacLaine was his half brother from Atlantis, and she was sold into slavery. And anyway, she was really, for actually, in Dancing in the Light, which is the book she wrote after Out on a Limb, she talks about meeting Ramtha, Shirley does, and crying for like 3 days. And I met Shirley there. I actually gave her a massage. She was very open. I think she had a falling out with Jay-Z. I think a
I think
few
so.
people did. But
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
but I still liked, I actually was lecturing at Contact in the Desert, and this woman is waving at me in the audience, and like I get, after the beginning, before it starts, I get down and it's Jay-Z waving at me I'm on the stage doing an announcement. She's waving at me. It's like that was like a karmic return. I used to be in the audience waving at her, and like there she was.
Wow.
Um,
Was that the recent Contact in the
that
Desert?
was before the COVID. It was like 2018. She was
Okay.
there with her, I think her grandson or something. I said, "Well, how are you doing?" I mean, she remember I was part of the Ramtha school for like 20 years, right? Were you part here for 20 years?
Yeah.
Right.
I was in and out from 1986 to 2006.
But you were only 13 in 1986, right?
I was.
But you were into it? Were you really into it?
I was. Well, and part of what I loved what we were learning, but I also, because um, Ramtha was talking about extraterrestrials and fairies and dragons and things like outside of, you know, our 3D physical realm. I was very much into that because I was having experiences. And so,
What were you having experiences about?
well,
What were,
My first conscious memory of being taken on a spacecraft was when I was 15.
From Yelm? Were you taken
Yeah,
in from Yelm? Wow. Were you abducted, or like was it a nice
it
taking you
was a
up?
really beautiful experience.
Oh, really? What happened? I'm curious.
So,
I don't
um,
need to turn the tables on you, but yeah, I am interested in this.
I know, and my my audience, some of them have heard the story,
Oh,
but it's not. So basically, I was taken to Io, Jupiter's moon of Io,
oh wow.
and I was being toured around what looked like a hospital facility. And
Mhm.
the beings that were there, they were disguising themselves as human
Mhm.
because their form tended to scare the humans that they had brought there.
Mhm.
So on this particular instance, I was not being examined myself. I had been with them many times before, but I was basically getting to be guided around, toured around to ask questions.
Mm.
And so it was in 1988. And what I asked, like, why are we here? Why am I here? And my guide, he said that those of us that had been brought there were being tested to see if something happened to Earth, if we could live in an environment like that or something
Yeah,
similar. And so, in 88, we're still in the Cold War on the verge of World War III.
right. We
And
always are, though.
I know, right? so, um, so then at the end of the tour, I asked him if I could see what he really looked like. Because, so my PhD is in zoology and marine biology. I've always been obsessed with animals and the weirder.
Wow. What did he look like?
Okay, so he was about 7 feet tall, pure white skin, bigger dark eyes, and very long red hair. And he had what looked
Red
like
hair.
yeah, red hair,
Oh,
super
and
red.
white skin. That's so interesting.
Yeah,
And were they originally from Io, this
no,
group?
no, they were just colonized there.
From where?
Well, actually, I don't know where they're originally from. They don't. Okay, so this was the interesting part is out of all the people who write about the different races that are out there, I've never seen this group described or illustrated. So
Wow.
a few years ago, I was working with one of my psychic medium friends, and I wanted more information about that. And so they are not part of any of the galactic federations. They're very neutral. They don't interact with Earth very much at all, just very,
Oh,
very sparsely, which is why they're not known.
mm.
And but they are connected somehow to the Arcturians. And the
Uh-huh.
Arcturians are one of my really strong groups. That's the primary group that I
Oh,
channel.
really? Do you know Vivian Chavez? She
I
was
do. She's
born.
been on my show, and I've been on hers. I love
Yeah.
her.
Actually, it's so funny you should say very white skin and red hair. This woman, I don't know if you can see her, she just sent me this picture. Did they look
Okay.
like that? No.
Well, redder hair, even more red, like fire engine red, kind
Mm,
of
mm,
red, and
mm.
like chalky white skin.
Chalky. But anyway, that experience opened you up. What's the connection to Ramtha in that experience? Was there
Well,
a connection?
so as you know, the Ramtha skull was very of interest to the government back in the 80s.
That's what they say. Yeah. I mean, I never saw any evidence of that, but
Okay. Well,
did you?
so,
Except for that
well,
guy Ron, who was a CIA agent.
hey, Ron.
Yeah, you know Ron, right? But
Yeah,
he converted. He converted. I liked Ron. He was kind of like a funny guy, you know.
funny. And I think he's still around,
Oh,
probably.
isn't he good? Okay. Yes. Good.
So, after I realized that it wasn't just a dream, when I came back out of the experience, for a few months, I thought it was just a dream. But
Mhm.
I was reading Whitley Strieber's book, Communion,
I
and
loved Whitley Strieber and his book. Have you interviewed Whitley?
I haven't. But if you know him,
Oh,
introduce
I
me.
know him, and he's actually knows Jay-Z pretty well. He does.
Okay. Well, so
I'll,
at the end of,
I'll give you his number.
okay, at the end of his book, he's interviewing people that had been taken, and they all are having the same kind of gray ET experience that he's had. But one guy had a completely different story where he's telling them that he had been taken to a moon of Jupiter and told he was one of the chosen ones. And
Ah,
Whitney made a little side comment, I hope it isn't Io. And my bot head to toe chills, tears started coming down my face. And I'm like, okay, that was a real experience. So I told
oh,
my mom,
Why did he say it was hope it wasn't Io, though?
Well, Io is the most volcanic planetary body in our solar system, so you can't be on the surface. So people
Oh,
think there's not life there, but as you probably know, like you can live inside of these planetary bodies.
well, of course, that's where most of the smart human beings, according to Ramtha, went. The
Yes,
Lemurians and the
right.
wise men went to the interior,
Yeah,
which I do think they have yet to find that interior. Well, some people, Agartha, the inner earth, all that. But yeah, Ramtha actually turned me on to like that possibility. And they've discovered huge caverns inside the earth. Like,
they
so
have. Well, so then a few days later, so I told my
yeah,
mom, knowing she
yes.
would believe me. And a few days later, she introduced me to one of these supposedly super high government people that had now been a student at the school
Oh,
who knew.
really? Who was that?
I don't know because that was so many years ago. I don't know his name, but he knew about the different ET groups that the government knows about and works with. And I shared my story. And
Mm,
when I described him, he was like, I don't know that race. He said, but we don't know all of them. There are so many out there. But he said, you had a real experience. So I had my own validation and then his validation.
wow. But a lot of abductees are obsessed with red hair, with red haired person. Did you know that red
No,
hair is like something that just draws a lot of contactees for whatever reason? I think there's a bunch of races that have red hair, supposedly. I mean, it's a
okay.
different genetics or something
Hmm.
that's. But so that's interesting. So it got you into the whole thing, and you just kind of blasted off since then. You should come on one of the Portal to Ascension shows that I do. Have you
I would
been
love
on
to.
that?
I no, but I would love.
Oh, okay. Yes, I'd love. Yeah, I'll introduce you to Neil Gar. I work with him a lot, and so you. Anyway, go. What else you want to ask about me? Sorry,
I'm gonna flip it back to you.
sorry. I'm
No,
just
this is great.
so interview. No, because I'm very curious. So yeah, go ahead. Yes.
Yeah. Well, so okay, so then so you're in the school, but then you start this TV show, right? The new
Oh, well,
reality show. And you
yes, and
start.
I think New Realities may have even been something that Ramtha would have said. The first name of the television show was In the Company of Truth. That's the Satya is the Hindu word for that. But yeah, I was living in Santa Fe. I was actually in acupuncture school there. I was sharing this house with this guy named Jonathan Lowe, who was doing a cable television show called The Art of Healing in Santa Fe, because Santa Fe, which is a great town, is full of healers.
Hmm.
And he had me do an interview. I used to do the camera because I did a lot of video work in New York before I moved to Santa Fe, and then I moved back to New York after Santa Fe. But so I interviewed this woman who was a dolphin facilitator, and I loved doing that. So I got back to New York after getting at my acupuncture license, which I don't practice because I mean, I like knowing it, but I just can't do that every day. But but anyway, I wanted to start a cable access show in New York, which was kind of getting popular, and so I started one in '93, and it was based on all the workshops and spiritual teachings that I had learned since going to Ramtha. And then it's still going, my cable access, and now it kind of morphed into my big YouTube channel, which has 85,000 subscribers, because I had all this content when
Hmm.
YouTube started. I was one of the early creators on YouTube, and I just had all this stuff from the cable access show that I started to upload, and it just gave me a head start. I mean, of course, a lot of people have a lot more viewers than that, but it was kind of, and I still pulling stuff up from the archives from those days. I have a great interview with Jay Z actually from
Okay.
What the Bleep tour, and
Okay.
but yeah, so I just started to. It was like after doing all the workshops, reading all the books, I wanted to like ask my own questions. I wanted to get in there one on one. So that's how it came out of that curiosity to do. Yeah, I probably have like, I don't know, 3,000, 4,000 shows, and a podcast on BBS Radio, and my YouTube channel, New Realities, and so many other platforms. I'm doing a bunch of different platforms, but yeah, so it came out of that. It's still a searching and a finding to know, you know,
Yeah. Well, so
to
let's
discover. Yeah.
I want to switch gears if we can to talk about your book,
Yes.
because
Well,
I
yeah.
have not had the opportunity yet to read it. It's on its way. It'll be here in a few days, but I'm
Oh, okay.
excited to read it.
Well, a lot of it comes out about the second basic concept from Ramp, or maybe it's the third or fourth. You are God, you create your reality, and what we're here to do. Come on, Lisa, what are we here to do? The
Well,
fourth,
we're here to gain the wisdom and evolve.
and according to Ramtha, make known the unknown.
Make known the unknown.
Does
Yes.
that sound familiar?
Oh yeah. Yes.
That became like, what does Ramtha mean? Make known the unknown. I really want, that was really a quest to discover what that meant. And what it means to me now, it may change. It's like being the creator, creating. People say everything is known, but I think creation is ongoing, being created, and we as creators are contributing to the creation. So when you do a show or give a talk, that's never been done before. You are making known the unknown, and expanding the course of feeling for the human population. You're like, you write a song, you develop a dance, you write a book, and all that is making known for somebody something they don't know, and including yourself as you manifest it, as you bring it into 3D world. So writing and books and movies, I've done some films and taking photographs, and being creative is like, I think that's why what we're here to do.
Yeah.
Like, you ever listen to Bashar?
Yep. Love Bashar.
Bashar, right? Not quite on the level of Ram, but I like them all. I mean,
Yeah.
but Bashar says we're here to follow your highest excitement, right?
Yeah.
My highest excitement is to make known the unknown, to create, so my book, after, so I had an abduction experience, actually, not as dramatic. I mean, not
Well,
as nice as,
can you
yeah.
share your
Yeah,
experience?
it's in my book, chapter 7, but I'll tell you. No, basically, I was driving cross country, 1987, from the West Coast to the East Coast, and we were driving for a long time, and we stopped along this little deserted road, and me and my girlfriend, we just passed out. We just went to sleep, and we felt like we were like suspended animation through the night, and we woke up in the same position we went to bed in. And who even remembers that? Like, I don't remember that from last night, really. So there was something about this being like this time mold, and then I realized a couple of days later I had this mark, this little puncture mark on the back of my knee,
Mm.
that my mother, who's in the lineage, I think, although she would deny it, of the abductions lineage, my grandmother, my mother, me. I'm sure your mother had experiences, right? And your grandmother or grandfather, right?
Probably. Yes. I.
Probably.
Yeah.
They follow the lineage, because my theory is that every generation they're modifying the genetic code, so at some point the human genetics can actually merge with the ET genetics to create the hybrid races.
Yeah.
That's my theory. So
And
anyway,
I'm part of the hybrid program.
yeah, I am. I think everyone at this stage is. We're all part of the hybrid program, because they've been following our lineages for at least 3 or 4 generations, I think, or maybe longer. But I can trace it back to at least the late 1800s or something back there. So, but it may go back. I mean, of course, they've been around a long time, but I think the modern kind of incarnation of the ET visitations kind of starts there with the airship, but the airship craze of the 1890s, that was like the first big UFO wave. Anyway, I think it sort of began there. So, and whoever these beings are, I mean, at least the grays, I mean, maybe you're being, and there's more and more contact happening all the time, more and more sightings happening all the time. And I think it's a positive thing. A lot of people are saying it's negative. Lou
Yeah.
Elizondo. Do you know Lou's latest? You know who he is?
Oh, I do, and I don't trust him.
Well, I trust him as far as being able to relay the government's inside position. He's like, he's had his own, and he says he's breaking free, but I think some of what he says is true, but I think he's walking a very um, narrow line between something and, if he, anyway, yeah, I think he should just come out with the truth, but he's telling as much as I think. But so he thinks, so it's negative. He's putting out the government program. This is negative. It's threat to national security.
Right.
And I don't think so.
No.
I think we're here in an evolutionary shift. And so a couple of I guess maybe it was even a year or maybe month. No, probably a year after I was woken up in the middle of the night, and in my hands was placed this little. It looked like a baby deer with
Mm.
big eyes, and it was really strange the way I was woken up. It's like this, like furry thing on my leg, and it's like, what's that? And then I was still in, like, when you go into these contact experience, your consciousness is altered, right?
Right.
So this thing was placed in my hands, and I didn't have any, like, this was not like, oh, how lovely my ET child. I didn't get that at all. It's like I said to myself, this is weird. What's going on? And then that's all I remember of that experience. So I didn't even see any beings there. All I saw was this little creature, and probably they wanted me to bond with it, I would say. I mean, have you met your ET offsprings?
I haven't yet, but supposedly I'm going to sometime in the near future. I
Okay.
have 12 hybrid children out there.
Wow. Who told you that?
Do you know Daniel Scranton?
I've heard his stuff. Yeah, he's an Arcturian guy, right?
He is, but he channels a whole bunch of different
Where
things.
is he? I'd like to meet him. Where's he located?
Amazing. He actually now lives in Australia. He used to live here in Hawaii, but he lives in Australia.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay. Daniel Scranton. Yeah. All right. Yeah. I mean, I've heard him. Brian Scott. Do you know Brian Scott?
I don't know him.
He has a YouTube channel, but every night he reads a lot of different. Every night it's a spiritual book, and actually, he read Daniel Scranton's Arcturian thing. He even read the book that I saved from going out of print, and I brought it to the Ramtha school. And you remember Michelle Hawkins? Did you know Michelle?
That name
She was,
does not
yeah,
sound familiar, but
she probably read this book at the Ramtha school because everyone loved it. And as soon as I read it in Hawaii, actually, this book, it was brought there by a woman who, I think she was dying or something. She wanted to give it to all her friends, or it was left in this outhouse in Maui. I found this and I said, oh my God. And do you know what book it is? It's a history of alchemy. It was The Red Lion.
oh, I love that book. I
Exactly. I
love
knew
that.
you know that book.
Yes.
And anyway, I found that book. It was before it was in its original English printing. Of course, it was written in Hungarian. And I brought it to Pavel, who brought it to Jay-Z, who gave it to Michelle, who reprinted it. And that's the reason that book is still in English,
Okay.
because of this finding it and giving it to Pavel, who gave it to Jay-Z, who loved it. And of course, Ramtha recommended it. Anyway, Brian Scott read the whole thing on his YouTube channel. His
Wow.
like 10 hours he read that
Wow.
book. And it is a fantastic book. It's really the journey of the soul. And, Saint Germain. And anyway, that's my little claim to
Well,
no, I'm really happy that book is in print. And I even met the Hungarian publisher once, who's a really great guy. Anyway, where were we?
okay.
Go ahead.
Well, tell me a little more about your book, because I think some of the listeners and viewers definitely would be interested.
Well, this book, if you can see that back, it is a collection of essays. Can you see that? So
Okay.
it's my story, but it's a collection of essays by people I thought were the top of the line. Because, after my abduction in 87, I call it an abduction because I don't really remember it. I mean, it was a contact. It was maybe it was friendly. I mean, I don't know. I don't mind being the father of an alien race. I don't know why people are opposed to that, but I think it's sort of actually, did you ever see my Bashar interview?
I don't know if I did.
Oh, because he says my genetics went into his lineage, into his
Okay,
Bashar
no,
line.
I did
Yes,
not.
I know. It's kind of funny at that moment in the interview. Um, anyway, so where was it? Right,
Okay, so your contact experience, and
right.
well, and I am curious though. Have you ever tried to be regressed, hypnotized to
Yeah.
find
Oh,
out
wait.
like
So you're asking me about my book, though. Sorry, but
your
my
book?
book. So after my contact experience, I went to all the UFO conferences, and you go to the UFO conference, you get to hang out, you have dinner with people. If you go to enough, it's like, oh, that guy again, and it's like, okay, you hang out with Nick Pope, you go out to restaurants with Whitley Strieber, and you become friends with. I mean, I talk about myself, Linda Moulton Howe. I brought Daryl Anka to New York a couple of times. I hosted him in New York. Carolyn Corey's a friend. Mary Rodwell, who's fantastic. Have you met Mary Rodwell?
I have not.
She's Australian too, but she regresses. She works with a lot of the Star Children's helmet, saying, "Tell me your memory, like under 5 and 6, sometimes of their memories coming as star children from other places." So she's great. So I took all the great people that I met at all these conferences and I said, "Hey, you want to write a chapter in my book?" Even everyone's favorite, John Mack. You know who John Mack is?
I do.
Well, there was an unpublished essay on John Mack's website that he had never published anywhere. So I called his archivist. I said, I'm making this, compilation of great speakers. I'd love to have John, because I knew John in the 90s when he used to speak in New York. And he was really someone who evolved the whole contact experience to a whole other level. I mean, he is really responsible for legitimizing, as much as it is legitimate, that contact exists and abductions exist and that people aren't crazy and they're having a real experience. So I knew John. He was very friendly and nice to me. So after he passed, I called his archivist, and they gave me permission to reprint this essay that was never printed anywhere else. I mean, they asked his family, they said sure. So John Mack, Whitley Strieber, Daryl Anka, Nick Pope, Grant Cameron, JJ and Desiree Hurtak, Carolyn Corey, Mary Rodwell, Linda Moulton Howe, these are all contributors. So if you want an understanding of what the UFO phenomenon is about and you don't know anything, this is a really good primer because it covers the bases. And I start with Nick Pope. You know who Nick Pope is? He used to work for the
Ancient
right.
Aliens
What's
fame,
that?
yeah, from Ancient Aliens, yes.
Exactly. But he's still, I said to Nick, is there stuff you still can't tell us from the MOD, Ministry of Defense? He goes, yes, I'm still. I said, would you like to share it now? He goes, no, I can't. Anyway, Nick is still kind of holding the party line, like it's okay for governments to have secrets.
Mm,
So I start, and I don't think it's okay because what's the big secret,
right.
really? So I divide the book into really 4 sections. I got the people like Nick Pope, the investigators. He calls
Right.
himself
Linda, all those, yeah.
Linda, and then I go into like the researchers who go a little more deeper, like John Mack, Grant Cameron. They're like, so I make a distinction, not that they're really, but the research, the investigators are ones that have a little arm's distance, and the researchers are a little more intimately involved. And then I go into the contactees, or the experiences, which I separate from into contactees and abductees. From the experiences, the big category, and the experiencers are the people like Carolyn Corey who have or like you.
Yeah.
I would call you an abductee. I would call you a contactee.
I
But
call myself an experiencer contactee, yes.
exactly. But the abductees, sounds like a whole like other racial group. The abductees are different than because it's not so pleasant for the abductees. There's a lot of trauma. Did you ever read who's that woman who had the really Carla Turner? She had some very awful experiences. Even, but then there's people like Chris Bledsoe who's having some amazing experience. You know who Chris Bledsoe is?
The name
He's
is familiar.
he's having some great healing experiences, and Preston Dennett talks about some great. So there's these two sides to the experiencer coin: the people
Mhm.
having trauma and the people having, well, what was that? Was all that was not all that was just amazing, like you know. So
Yes.
and you get that about this phenomena. You get these like really big split, and that's sort of what I cover. It's like, I don't know. Are they bad? Are they coming to invade the planet and take over our lives? Or are they here to help us evolve to the next level? Well, you say yes, but there's the whole other 50% that are saying
Right.
they're evil, stay away, they're here to control us. But I'm leaning more towards like, no, maybe, but maybe we'll never know. I think we will know, because I don't know. I think we're in disclosure right now. That's why we're having this conversation.
Okay.
Anyway,
So
what-
what I want to postulate to you, because this is what I have received from my ETs and
yeah,
also what I learned from Ramtha as well, is that all timelines exist simultaneously. And so, yes, there are realities where the 50% that thinks they're negative and fear based, that reality exists, sure. But the other reality also exists. And so, which timeline do you want to be a part of?
and you can choose, ladies and gentlemen. You can choose. Do you want to be part of the good timeline or the
Yeah,
not so? I want to be part of the good, positive timeline.
me
So
too.
be it, right? So be it. We used to say.
So be it.
Exactly. Exactly. You can't do that with everyone and know what that you mean.
Yeah.
So I'm glad we have that history, Lisa. So anyway, yeah. So I wrote this book because I was obsessed with the topic, because I wanted to know what was going on. So it's a really great overview of all these different people with their own little timeline trajectories, and it kind of encompasses the good, the bad, the ugly, the beautiful, and all my book. So it's like you choose from reading these chapters. And it goes into what the government knows, what they may not know, what experiences are going through. And I think we need a book like that to really prime the public, first of all,
Mhm.
not to be in fear.
Yeah.
There's nothing to fear, right? And, Ramtha used to say he was an alien, right?
Yep.
Were you there when the crop circle came out of the pipe smoking alien?
No,
Do you remember that one?
I
Oh,
don't.
I wasn't there at the time, but anyway, Ramtha claimed to have made that crop circle or be responsible for that. But anyway, what what else do you want to know?
Well, so we're running out of time, but I would love for you to share with the audience some of the upcoming events that you have, because you co-host
Yeah.
different events like in Sedona and elsewhere. So what do you have coming up that
I have a
people?
lot of things coming up, actually. I hope you put this on the. Are you? When is this going to be posted?
Okay, so not until beginning of October. So the
Oh,
Sedona one will already
oh,
be done.
yeah. I'll already. Too bad you missed the Sedona Transcendence Retreat. It was fantastic in my timeline. But in October, I'm going to the New Life Expo in New York. That's October 19th to the 20th, and then am I doing something in November? No, December. I'm speaking in December. I think 6th to the 8th. I'm speaking in Sarasota, Florida, at the Cosmic Spiritual Center, and then the following week, I'm going on the Galactic Cruise. I'm one of the hosts and presenters there. That's look up galacticorigins.cruise.com, and you could come and join me, and a bunch of Vivian Chavez is going to be there. You want to come, Lisa?
I think
Um,
that sounds
JJ,
fantastic.
JJ and Desiree Hertog will be there. Laura Eisenhower, bunch of really fantastic people. We have about 20 different presenters on that cruise. So if you like cruises and all the food you can eat, and we're actually, I think, going to go through the Bermuda Triangle from or Cape Canaveral down to the Yucatan. So we're going to do a special meditation if we don't all disappear on the roof of the ship. And then we're going to be in the Yucatan for 5 days, going to the Mayan temples, which is really fantastic. And then we do a meditation on the winter solstice, sunrise on the deck of the ship. And sign up, galacticoriginscruise.com. be part of the magic. In January, I might be speaking at Alex Gray's Cosm. I'm just confirming that if that goes through. I don't know. And then in February, the Conscious Life Expo. Why don't you come to the Conscious Life Expo, Lisa, in February 7th, 8th, and 9th at the LAX Hilton, consciouslifeexpo.com. I'm presenting there. A lot of my presentations, I talk about UFOs and ETs, but I also talk about remote viewing.
Yeah.
And I've been actually teaching courses for remote viewing for making contact. So you learn the basics of remote viewing, and then you go explore other planets. You've already done that one, but you go explore other planets with your remote viewing powers, which is really fun because, like, if you know from sending and receiving, everyone can remote view.
Yes.
Everyone can know the future. We're just not in touch with. So I'm teaching that at the expo, the Conscious Life Expo, 7th, 8th, and 9th. Then I'm doing something in Florida on the 25th to 26th. I think it's spiritfest.usa, Orlando. And then in March, I'm in Sedona again for the Sedona Ascension Retreat, which is really fun. We're going to have Billy Carson there. We're going to have some other major speakers there. Maybe, do you know who?
Quite a different lineup than this year.
Bashar will be there, actually, though, again. Maybe you'll come back. I'll meet you there, Lisa. And then I think I'm doing a retreat in Sedona the end of April. I'm speaking at the Writers Conference in San Diego. I mean, you know, it just keeps going.
Okay.
And I'm writing the second book. I'm writing my next book, which is really focused on the contact experience and the shift of consciousness that has to happen if we're really going to make contact. Like, it doesn't happen in a normal state. When these beings show up, you're shifted. So you might as well prepare yourself for the shift. So, yeah, I mean, the world is changing, and no matter who wins the election, it's going to keep evolving. And I think it's fun. You know, we live in exciting times, and why not? You know?
Well, so what is your website for people to find you and all your stuff?
You can find all my interviews on my YouTube channel. I interview a lot of channels. You know, I interviewed, Wendy Kennedy and Bashar. I've interviewed, and the latest channels. Lisa Royale. You know Lisa Royale?
I don't know her personally, but I love her stuff.
Yeah, she's going to be at this conference in Sedona in September, but she's also maybe there in March as well. Yeah, have you interviewed her?
Not yet.
Oh, you'll like her. So anyway, I interview lots of people channeling because I think it's because I started with channeling. It's like my root there in channeling. But although most of the people that do channel, I have to admit, maybe you will too, they're not as good as the original. I mean, I think Ramtha was probably Ramtha, Bashar, Paul Selig is really fantastic. Do you know Paul Selig?
I haven't listened to his stuff, no. I know who he is, but
Paul Selig's as good as some of these. I mean, I like Paul Selig a lot, and he feels really original. Like, they're original when they have their unique style of channeling. If they have to copy someone else's channeling, that's okay, but we don't all have to sound like Bashar.
No.
But anyway, I do interview a lot of scientists. Nassim Harmein, Nassim. You know his work? Nested holes. Talks about black hole science. He's great. You'd like him. Bruce Lipton, who actually I found because of the Golden Thread newspaper. You remember the Golden Thread?
I do, and I was a big fan of his work, and I used to teach that when I was a professor.
Oh, what were you a professor of?
Biology.
Oh, really? I wrote a whole biology paper based on his work, but I found him because he had published an article in the Golden Thread in like the 80s. And then, I helped bring him out to New York originally. And anyway, I just brought him to New York recently, but I have a bunch of interviews I've just done with him, and he's fantastic. Have you met him?
Only just getting my book signed at a
Oh,
conference.
you'll like him. You should tell him you teach it. I should send you my paper called the Metabiologic Evolution, because I had to write this thesis about on biology for this biology class, and no one could. I know we're running out of time, right?
Yeah.
No one, there was no proof of evolution. I mean, species look like other species, but there was no process of how one species became another, and it's not adaptation. You can adaptation all you want, but how does, like, a fish become a frog or something like that? I mean, how? No one has the answer, right? I mean,
Well,
what's
right.
your
And I'm an evolutionary. I was trained as an evolutionary biologist,
right? So
and
how does speciation happen?
yeah,
There's punctuated. You know about the punctuated.
the
And
equilibrium.
my theory, and Bruce wasn't even sure about this, but my theory, it happens because of solar radiation. Cosmic radiation modifies the genetic code within one generation, so the chicken is different than the egg. You know, that's,
Okay.
or the egg is different than the chicken. So that's my theory. And I go into like the whole theory of morphogenetic fields in my paper, because you need the morphic field to change based on the intention of the species, to change the morphology based on intention of Lamarck, right?
Yeah.
John
So,
Baptiste Lamarck.
so
Right.
perhaps I can have you back on and we can continue with the
Yeah, I'd
conversation.
love to, and I'll talk about remote viewing. My theories, how people can learn it so easily,
I would
because
love
it's
that. But
because
we do, time is running out.
oh
So,
no, let's change that timeline.
well, so thank you so much for being on.
Oh well.
And for those of you listening or watching, thank you for being here with me. And I will see you next time on Connection to the Cosmos. Aloha.
um,